Protection Warrior feels like it's been on the back burner for the latter half of Dragonflight. While a dominant tank back in Season 1, it eventually got outshined by almost every other tank. Luckily, Warrior has gotten some talent reshuffling along with some juicy hero talents going into the War Within, so in this video, I want to talk about my first impressions with the class and the upcoming changes in the next expansion. So let's take a walk. Before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. This is obviously beta testing. There's a ton of time for Blizzard to make changes or tweaks to certain abilities, sets, or effects. But with that out of the way, let's nerd out about this Zug class. Protection Warrior, like a few other classes in the War Within, falls under the umbrella of having some pretty significant talent redesigns. While the protection spec tree goes noticeably untouched, the class tree has gotten quite the glow up. On the left hand side, we have the old class tree, and on the right hand side, we have the newly updated class tree. Besides the obvious layout and pathing changes, let's talk about specifics. First thing to note, we've actually seen a few talents that make it into the baseline kit for the Protection Warrior. Berserker Rage, a talent that resided in the first tier of the tree, has actually transitioned back into the base kit, which is just generally a win unless an extra keybind is something you don't really desire. The talent Blood and Thunder has actually been worked into Thunderclap, allowing Rend to spread freely without the talent point cost. Titanic Throw and Flurry Strikes have actually just been removed completely alongside the Capstone Sonic Boom. This is important because now we only have 48 total talent points to spend instead of the 52, allowing for more talent choice, abilities, and bonuses to be acquired throughout the entire tree. With this, there have actually been some reworked talents as well. First, Leeching Strikes has been nerfed from 5% leech value down to 3. For those who missed it, Blizzard has actually been trying to pull back on the power of Leech as a stat for all classes, hence why this reduction has occurred. Second Wind has actually also been improved with a health-based heal when being below 30% health. This is always a powerful bonus for any tank. I personally don't believe I've done high enough keys on beta yet on the Warrior, but this is resulting in anywhere between a 1 to 3% overall heal. It's probably going to be stronger on DPS counterparts. Honed Reflexes has also been reworked. Instead of a flat cooldown reduction on Pummel and Shield Slam, it instead reduces the cooldown of all things like Shield Wall, Pummel, Intervene, Stormbolt, and Spell Reflect by 5%. This reduction is going to be pretty minor for those shorter cooldowns like Pummel and Spell Reflect, but it's going to be very strong for abilities like Shield Wall and Stormbolt. I'm not going to go over every single talent shift, but some of the more notable changes include easier access to Shockwave, in turn, the reduction in capstones. The best part about this new rework is the seamless pathing, allowing the Protection Warrior to gather almost all desired talents with points to spare. Need more CC for those pesky dungeon mobs? Or maybe Xalatath orbs? You can grab Intimidating Shouts. Need group utility? Intervene and Commanding Shout are now at your disposal with easy workarounds. The capstones are a little odd since they did flip around a lot of talents in the tier 3 of this tree. Armored to the Teeth and Cruel Strikes have seemed to swap places, and Avatar is now located in the center of the tree. Due to the power of Avatar, this is probably a must. Either Wild Strikes or Endurance Training is going to get you there, but Endurance Training has seen an increase in point cost. This is actually going to be the only major complaint I have about this tree. This talent row in particular isn't necessarily strong, but it requires 2 points to path through, so personally, I think they could add a path here, and it would resolve a lot of issues. Outside of that, this talent tree seems incredibly balanced, and essentially what I'm trying to get at is I really like this new tree. With talent changes out of the way, let's quickly talk about the tier set. Tier sets in this first season of the War Within seem to be leaning on the more simple side. The 2 set actually reads, when your Shield Slam cooldown is reset by Strategist, you gain Expert Strategist, increasing the damage of Shield Slam by 5%, and reducing all damage taken by 3% for 6 seconds. Strategist is a talent in the spec tree, which resets the cooldown of Shield Slam. Whenever this occurs, Shield Slam damage is now going to be increased with a small 3% DR accompanying it. This is similar to most tank sets, a small damage increase here with a small DR. The most important aspect of this is actually going to be uptime. And from my testing, you're seeing an 85 to 95% uptime on this DR, so all in all, it's pretty much going to be guaranteed to be active at most times during combat. Moving on to the 4 set, it actually reads Shield Slam Critical Strikes increases the damage dealt by Thunderclap and Revenge by 10% for 8 seconds. This is going to put an emphasis on Critical Strike. While the Warrior gains some through their talent tree, they're most likely going to want to stack a little bit more of this than they previously have through their gear. When you do land a critical strike with Shield Slam, you gain a 10% damage increase on both Thunderclap and Revenge for 8 seconds. This doesn't just affect your next cast, but all casts within that 8-second window. So ideally, you're going to want to get high uptime on this to buff both of these abilities. My main complaint with this tier set is how it's tied to a secondary stat of Critical Strike. It's not often that a Protection Warrior generally wants to aim for crit over a stat like Versatility outside of damage. Later in an expansion cycle, it makes sense, but this early on, it's going to be difficult to achieve enough crit to have high uptime on these, making this tier set have a little bit lower value than other tank tier sets. I do want to briefly talk about hero talents here, but I'm not going to go super in depth because there's just a lot to talk about and I want to do a separate video for each, respectively. The Warriors actually had their hero talents announced really early on, and I honestly do believe that Blizzard nailed the class fantasy on the head. First, you have Mountain Thane. This tree focuses heavily into the Call of Thunder, greatly empowering things like Thunderclap, as well as a rotational emphasis on cooldowns like Avatar and Demoralizing Shout. The talents in this tree cause Thunderclap to deal extremely high damage, and Shield Slam will turn Thunderclap into Thunder Blast, dealing massive damage over the course of a key or maybe a raid fight. Avatar and Demoralizing Shout will also grant uses of Thunder Blast. The beauty of this build is that nothing changes. If you liked Warrior in Dragonflight, you're going to continue to like how it plays in the War Within. Next, you have Colossus, the Veteran of Battle. This hero talent tree is a little bit more straightforward, just granting physical damage bonuses to things like Revenge and Shield Slam, and the ability to shrug off attacks through things like increased block, as well as a second wind type talent. The big staple of this hero talent tree, though, is the ability Demolish. This ability actually takes a series of massive blows to the target and surrounding enemies. The entire playstyle really revolves around gaining stacks of Colossal Might to amplify the damage of this Demolish ability, along with additional cooldown reduction. And believe me, this feels very good to hit despite it being a channel. I have to say, both of these trees feel great on their own, and like I said, I'm going to spend time going into depth in separate videos in the future. Overall, I think Protection is actually looking really good going into the War Within. It's very enjoyable to play. While their tier set does feel a little lackluster, the hero talent trees make up for this. The changes to the class tree are also phenomenal, and generally they now have a better kit for Mythic Plus. I'm eager to see what this class can do in Season 1. Anyways, what do you guys think about the Protection Warrior? Let me know down below. Of course, a massive shout out to all my Patreon supporters, because without you guys, there'd be a lot less videos like this. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.